Hello friend, welcome back. In our previous video, we successfully complete our logging portion, and also here I have discussed about that things with you, how can update your all that URL with the HTTP response redact. And here friend, here you can see I have also defined one of the condition, that means when any user want to access our this user logging path. So here if you want to access this path, like that is actually our logging URL should be just as a logging, not this type of one of the URL I don't want to display for this user, right? So it's now showing as a user logging. Because of all, here you can see into the view area I just define the same things as a return, render, request, and the logging app and the logging HTML. So for the reasons this user actually now can actually access directly our this path. So here I don't want to display it, I want to display it should be display only that logging, right? So now if you want to do that work, only we have to update our this part as same we did for our here. So better I just simply copy it. Okay, so it should be redirected to our which page, it should be redirected to our same index, that means the logging page. So I just simply define the logging, that means in our app name as a logging app. Here I want to redirect it to our logging page. So that is actually the same condition, but here with this I think you already know about it, how can prevent your inappropriate URL, right? So right now I don't want to use it, so I just simply make the things as a note better. Okay, so I just put that note, so it should be reference to you. So now I just simply defining it. So now that means when this user, any user want to access directly this path, that means this function, then it should be redirected to our with this HTTP response redact, it should be redirected to our logging app and the logging, right? So if you go to our URL into the logging, I have already defined that path, that will be as a logging. So now let's check this out. If you now click as a save all, and now I just refresh it, and now if you want to access our this URL, that means here that is user logging URL. Now I want to access it, click as a enter. Now you can see now you cannot actually access it directly, it should be redirected to you to the logging. Perfect. So that is actually the appropriate things. I hope you can well understand about it. So we successfully complete our logging part. Now I want to work for our logout. So for the logout, I want to create one of the another function. So if you want to working with this logout, so after this, okay. So after this, better I want to create another function. So here I name that function as a def and then user underscore logout. So I just name it one of the function name as a logout. And also here we have to pass that request. So I just simply pass that request. And also they have the another authentication class function I have already defined with this authenticate. You can see that is actually the login, and also they have the logout. So I have already used this logging. So with this logging, I'm actually check this user, right? So now I want to use our this function, that means the logout function. So I just simply copy it. And now here that is actually the request, right? So now with this logout function, I want to pass that request. So then that means this user will be log out, and when this user will be log out, I want to redirect it to the index page. So if you want to redirect it, then I want to use our HTTP response again, the return. So as I told you, we always use actually the HTTP request, then it will be better, HTTP response redact, and then the reverse, right? Into the reverse, I want to pass which page. I want to pass our index page into the index page, that is our app name, and then our name as the index, right? So now I just simply define our app name as a logging app, and then I just simply define our index, so that is actually our path name. So now when this system will log out this user, when this user is already logged in, after that logged in, then our this logging portion will be activated, right? So for the reasons here we have to actually defining it. So for the reasons I have already added this function. Here you can say I have already added that input as a logging required. That means with this we can actually define that user is already logged in. Okay, so with this function we can defining it. So now I want to add these things. So here in particular that area, that the @ and then we have to pass our this function, that is our logging required. That means with this it should be confirmed this user is already logged in. Then when this user will be logged in, after that our this function will be activated. Okay, so for the reasons with this you can actually defining it. So I just simply define as a logging required. That means this user is logged in. And now for our this logout, I have to create one of the URL for this one. So now go to our URL. We have to define another path. So better I just simply copy it, and here I just simply paste it. So here I define that path will be as a logout. Okay, path will be as a logout, and with the view I have created one of the function. I have created one of the function as a user logout. So I just simply define our function name, and I just name it as a logout. So now I want to add this in our menu area. That means here. So if you want to add this, then you have to go to your base URL, that means the base HTML, and here I want to take another menu, and I just name it as a logout. Okay, I just name it as a logout, and also I have created one of the URL. So I defined that URL name as a logout. So now I want to define that with this app name. I have defined our path name as a logout. Perfect. So now let's check this out. Now if you click as a save all, I just click the save all, and now go here and refresh it. So now go home, go to that our logging, and here if you now click as a username as a Kazi, put that password 12345, click as a logging. Now you can see now we are successfully logged in. And now if you click as a logout, so they have some of the message as a not received match add logout. Okay, so that is actually not defining. So I have did something wrong in our 35 line. Here you can see I define as a slash. So here it should be as a clone. That means if you go to that view, into the view area, here you can see I define as a slash, it will be as a clone, right? So we have already discussed about that things with you, that the logging and the clone, and then our path name. So here it should be directed to our index page. So here you have to define your index path. So I just simply defining it. Now if you click as a save all again, now go back, and also I just refresh it. Okay, I just refresh it. Now click as a logging, and I just logging with the Kazi, and then put the password 345, click as a logging. Yeah, now we are successfully logging. And now if you click as a logout, now here you can see it's now showing some of the error, that is a page not found, and also it's redirected to one of the another URL as a accounts, right? So here also we have to defining some of the things, like when this user will be logged out, then our this URL not should be visible. Here it should be visible our logging. So that is the URL. If you want to define, then you have to go to your setting. That means in our side, into the side, there is our setting option, and into the setting option into the last area. Okay, after this, better I want to define one of the note for you. This will be as a logging. Here we have to define this path. So when our logging URL we have to define, so I just simply define as a logging and the URL. Okay, for the logging URL, here we have to define one of the path. So here I have to define the path will be as a logging, right? So here I have already defined one of the URL path, so that will be our URL path. So it should be redirected to our this path area. For the reasons here I have defined our logging URL. Into the logging URL I defined that path, it should be as a logging. Perfect. So now if you click as a save all, okay, now I just click as a save all again, check it, and now I just go back and refresh it again. There is our home page, there is our register page, there is a logging page, there is a logout page. So now if you click as a logging, and now here I define as a Kazi @ and then our password, click as a logging. Now you are successfully logging. And also if you go to our logout, now you can see now they have no error. Okay, you can see now if you click on here, now it's automatically added our this URL, that is the URL I have defined in our setting option area. So into the setting I have defined this URL, right? So now you can see it's now perfectly redirected to our this URL. So that is the URL I have already created it, and after that automatically it's added our this logout function. That means there have also another function I have used as a default one of the Django function, that is a logout function. I hope friend it's very much clear to you. Because of all, I have already created one of the URL as a logging. If you go to that logging, you can see I have already created one of the URL as a logging. Now you can see they have no errors. If you click the logout, perfectly it's now redirected to our logout page. So friend, we successfully complete our logging portion, we successfully complete our registration portion, and also we successfully complete our logout portion. So now I want to actually update our this menu bar, like when this user will be logged in. Okay, that means when this user will be logged in, then our register and the logging, these two of this button not should be visible. And when this user will be logged out, then our this register and the logging will be visible. So how can define this validation in our next video? I will show you that things with a live example. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.